Haven, WNHH-FM, your home for community radio. I see Ala joined us too. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Well, New Haven was ticking yesterday. It's a day we're not going to forget, I think, for the rest of our lifetimes. The people who were there yesterday when the Black Lives Matter movement led a march that it had not organized in the first place, but took organization of and brought 1,000 people onto I-95, claimed the space in protest of police misconduct and the murder of African Americans in this country by law enforcement. And it was an amazing day, folks, in protests all around the country against the murder of George Floyd. And in New Haven, unlike other cities, we had a day of protest that did not end in arrest. It did not end in violence. We're going to have three people on the program today who have a lot to do with why things are going right in New Haven, but also with the demands that are in the community about what we can do to make things better. Say good morning to Ala Ochimara of Black Lives Matter, who was one of the three women who led yesterday's march. Good morning, Ala, and thank you for coming on. Is your mic unmuted,
Thank you for
Ala?
having me.
Oh, great to see you.
Wait, okay, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's very nice to see you. Boy, I didn't know how much sleep you're going to be getting last night, but I figured it was a long day.
I didn't get much.
And Adis Castillo from the Citywide Youth Coalition. We've welcome back to the show, Adis. And she's
Hi, how you doing? Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. And State Rep Robin Porter. Rob, I'm going to ask, I'm back the State Rep Robin Porter, who was at the protests, at most of those protests, and is also inside the halls at the state capitol, pressing some of the cutting edge police reform measures that people have been seeking. Robin, good morning, and thanks for being here.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, Adis and Ala. Thank you for having me.
So I want to talk a lot about what happened yesterday, but if it's all right with you folks, I'd like to start with how each of you was affected when the video went viral of the police officer in Minneapolis who kept his knee on an unarmed accused $20 forger while a crowd said, and he said he can't breathe, and killed him. Maybe if you wouldn't mind telling me what your reaction was when you saw that video and how you've been feeling about it personally since then. Maybe if we could start with Robin.
Ooh, actually, in all honesty, I have not watched the video. I have seen things come through my Facebook feed, but I do not think that I'm going to watch the video. I've seen enough of those videos in my lifetime. I believe that seeing one more video might actually send me over the edge. It made me think about a conversation that I had with my best friend whose brother was killed almost 30 years ago. And what she said to me was, Tweety died again. Tweety was shot at 18 in his mother's front door. As she opened the door, he was gunned down by some cops and killed on his mother's front door in front of her. And to hear my best friend say Tweety died again, and she was talking about George Floyd almost 3 decades later, there's not many words that I can put to that, Paul. It's just every Black mother's nightmare. It's the one thing that we fear every time our children or adult children leave our sight. We have to worry about it. Will we be next? Will our children be next? Will our father, our brother, our sister, our mother, who's going to be next if we don't stop this violence, if we don't stop these murders?
And Ala, you were speaking at the rally yesterday about how you're feeling at this point, about how you don't want to see one more of these videos. It sounds like maybe, unlike Robin, you did watch this one.
Actually, no. I stopped watching the last video that I watched, and because I refer to it as trauma porn. Black people, we know what it looks like when we're murdered. We've been seeing these videos, and they get, when you see something like that, it's embedded on your mind. It affects how you sleep. It affects how you breathe. It affects your everyday life. And last video I saw was when they murdered Philando, and I still have nightmares about that. So no,
There
I
was
do
something
not
about
watch
that one,
videos.
Ala. Excuse me. There was something about that
Mhm.
Philander one, and obviously I seem different from you folks because I'm white, so I don't live with it the same way. I've been in situations where I know if I were black, I would have been shot, and I
Yeah.
wasn't, and I didn't worry about being shot. But there was something about that Philando Castile one. I don't know what it was, because you saw and this was we weren't as used to people getting that camera in a good position when you're watching the cops on Facebook Live,
Mhm.
and the way he so calmly said, I have a registered gun. I mean, he did everything to such an extreme example, because a lot of these cases are when the other person, the victim, isn't perfect. So a $20 bill that you may not pass, does that mean you get murdered? The Castile one just did send me over there. So you watched that one and you said, enough.
Yeah, and I didn't want to watch it. It was just like, on my timeline. And that's why a lot of times, and I encourage Black and brown folks, queer bodies, the people who are forced into these margins, to be very mindful of what they ingest visually. We can't really control what other people post, but I just stay off of social media, and or sometimes I delete people if I feel like they're just sharing too much trauma porn. I don't need to know, nor do I need to see a police murder to know that it was wrong. I don't care if he had a 20 forged $20 bills. I don't care how many times they think the car is stolen. I don't care how many times, they thought it was a gun and it was an inhaler or a drink or just their hands. I don't need to see it to know that police murder us with impunity, that these are state-sanctioned murders, and that it doesn't matter what we think or the police thought was wrong or what crime was being broken. It never equates to someone losing their life. Property does
So
not
all of the power
outweigh
of
any
video.
value of any property, doesn't outweigh a person.
I'm so interested in what you're saying,
What
excuse
did
me,
you say?
because on the one hand, without these videos, we wouldn't have the rest of society see what a small portion of society saw, and they wouldn't have been able to know that they're blatant lies, like Minneapolis. I think what I'm hearing from you is that the people who are living this, it's not a good idea for health or action to keep watching, but you would want the rest of society to watch it, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we've been getting lynched for hundreds of years now, and white people are just catching up to the magnitude and the amount. And for every one of these people that are murdered by the police that we know their name, there's so many more that are being murdered actively right now that we don't know their names. When people are maimed by the police and aren't murdered, we very rarely ever hear their names. And they are also the victim of police violence.
So Shauna Lash writes in, fantastic work, everybody. Yesterday, Witch Hair says, great work yesterday. Ann Wiley says, hearts. Eddie Chase says, R.I.P. Philando Castile. Phil Lustinator, yesterday was amazing. I couldn't make it because of work, but I shared and streamed everything. It's the most I could do. If you're watching, you probably wish you could march. Thank you for streaming nonstop. You're welcome. I'm sorry my battery went dead. And Sharice says, I was there yesterday. She's an incredible leader. Addis Castillo, you work every day with Black and Brown youth in New Haven at the Citywide Youth Coalition. You talk about this kind of stuff. Did you watch the video, and why or why not?
I watched all that I could take of the video, to be honest. I have 3 sons at home. I don't want to keep watching people of color getting killed. I watched maybe the first minute and a half of the video, the takedown and the knee on the back. And as someone who, I used to work at Long Lane School and Connecticut Juvenile Training School, and I remember being trained on how to do restraints, and we never used pain compliance. That was not allowed. We were always supposed to do everything with some level of care and dignity. And it just hurts me to see people in positions of power, specifically that of law enforcement, to be trained in a way that completely objectifies the humanity of other people. And to watch a video for 10 minutes of a man gasping for air was a lot for me. I think I must have watched maybe half of it and turned off the rest because I just couldn't do it. And I can't do it because I have 3 sons at home and they're all 16. And my son, my oldest, he's 5'11", over 200 pounds. When people see my son Robbie, they think he's in his 20s. And what if one day someone wants to manhandle him because he doesn't move fast enough for them? Or they just assume because he's bigger than they are that he's some kind of giant and therefore I got to make an example out of you. That's a lot, to constantly live in fear that something's going to happen to your children. And never mind to hold this position at Citywide and be constantly worried about the 20,000+ students in this city and worry about their fathers, their brothers, their uncles. Like this, it's been hard to sleep. Like we got involved yesterday and we went out there. We didn't hesitate specifically because we can't do this anymore. I can't sleep at night. So thank you, Allah, for calling it what it is. It is trauma porn. I think the last video I seen in totality was Ahmad's video. And in watching that was just like, I still shaking thinking about it. I feel like we're constantly being vicariously traumatized by the media, by our Facebook feed, and even in having to retell our stories. Every time I have to say something about how I feel it all over me. I feel that trauma. I feel my ancestors.
And we're talking with Addis Castillo, Robin Porter, and Ala Ochimare about the George Floyd murder and about the march that happened yesterday, which in the midst of all the pain in this country right now, really did produce an unexpected moment that I'm going to call joy and liberation, but we're going to see if the other people feel the same way. Cherie Salame says hi to Robin and Adi. Thanks for listening. Adi, someone said a mute noise is blocking you. But I hear you. I hear you. So yesterday, there was going to be a rally about this murder. There are rallies all over the country. We had smaller rallies in New Haven. And all of us were wondering, what's this rally about? We can't figure out who's organizing it. I know you folks didn't know. I didn't know. And, I'm a reporter. So I said, well, we're not going to miss this just in case something happens. I didn't realize it was going to be a 12-hour day and that we're going to make history on the highway I-95. And I ran into Ala there. I said, Ala, do you know who's on this? She goes, nope. I didn't even know if I was going to come. I wanted to make sure it wasn't some kind of skeezy thing because there were reports about who's organizing protests and whether certain people, maybe right-wing extremists, maybe Antifa, want to create violence for the people in communities they don't live in. So it looked like you made a decision yesterday, Ali. You decided to show up. You are a founder of Black Lives Matter in New Haven. You're experienced at marches. I want to start by asking you, why did you show up and at what point did you realize you were suddenly going to be leading this thing and you're going to be responsible with 2 others for whether people got hurt? You're mute right now, Ala. You're mute. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. COVID
No problem.
times, I'm always talking on mute. Anyways,
we live in Zoom.
So I was curious. Addis, who is my mentor and my sister, and I learned from her, actually her and Robin, so it's awesome to be on this call with them. But Addis is my mentor. I oftentimes don't move unless I talk to her first when it comes to the movement and liberation. And she hit me up and was like, who is this? Are you doing this? And we had shared, one of the other members of Black Lives Matter were sharing things that are going on in the state. We all actually were following other people's protests and showing up with other people's protests, and we weren't leading, just to be in solidarity. Like, we don't always have to be in the front, even though that's oxymoronic as what happened yesterday. But when we got there, the person wasn't there. And I have a really great network of people who were trying to figure out who started and created that protest. What I've been hearing around the country from some of the other organizers that I know in some of the cities that riots are happening is that some of the beginnings of the riots aren't people like me and Addie's and Robin and Black
Well, we
and brown
saw that
people.
last night at the police station. We met a guy from Burlington, Connecticut, white kid, 24, bringing a rolling pin with him, looking for violence. And all of a sudden, he just went to wherever they were protesting. They started throwing batteries and bottles at the cops. That's when it all turned last night.
I mean, well, actually, and I wanted to correct you, Paul, because I need you to go back and change that Independent article. I wasn't gonna run up on you yet.
You can run up on me. I'm here.
But I was taking a break. But actually, when we asked the police if we can go inside the building, and they did not answer us. We kept asking them. And so we called the white people to the front to stand in protection of us. Okay. And we took 2 steps. We did not even touch a police officer's shield that they shielded up around us. And we took 2 steps. And before the second step was completed, they started pepper spraying us. We did not storm the building. We were walking peacefully. We were hand in hand. We were singing. We wanted to get into the building because Mayor Elliker tweeted a picture of him inside the building saying that he was inside the building watching us. But so going back to why I took it over, why we decided to take it over is because I need to make sure that my city is protected. We created Black Lives Matter New Haven for that very reason. We wanted to make sure that Black and brown bodies that we knew that were going to come out, and white bodies that we knew were going to come out, because they thought it was our action, because Black Lives Matter was all over that flyer and so many people contacted us, and it was decided in that moment that I was going to take it over, that we were going to take it over, to make sure that the right mission, the right voices, one voice, one sound, the right proper demands got out, and that Black and brown folks were protected. I don't think any of these riots are started because Black and brown people are saying they're going to riot. Things just happen, and that's what happens. And oftentimes it's the police who instigate the riots, and then we're looked at as wrong, but we're actually just fed up.
Megan Farrington says, allies watching this hear her words. When you share these images of Black and brown bodies being murdered and hurt, you are furthering harm to the Black community heart. Listen to them. Thanks for listening, folks, and thanks for posting comments. So I was kind of watching this unfold yesterday. So it sounded like, okay, you're going to be charged. You said it sounds like people want to march. You made a speech. You're in front of Campus Customs. You said people want to march. So you had hundreds of people at the beginning, and then it kept growing. And you realized you had a hand where people are very upset and they needed to do something. Now it's going to be up to you and 2 of your colleagues, Ashley Huckabee and Amelia Sherwood, to keep this going where you wanted to go. Am I right that when you started walking down Elm Street, you thought you might be going to Green? At some point, okay, we'll go to the police department, and then it kind of made a change?
To be honest, we were organizing right in the moment. So we were going to march, and we were going to march to the Green, and then Black Lives Matter held a march on the Green that brought 2,000 people before. So, and it just wasn't enough. And people were angry, and people needed more than that. And I'm going to give my people and lead my people to what they want. And we decided to go to the police station, but we shifted once we saw that the police were trying to direct us during the rally. And we know what the chief of New Haven did with his awesome photo op and everything, but we were not going to let the police lead us to a parade route. I don't know what they thought we were doing.
And that was so interesting. I was watching that happen. I was actually standing right next to you, and the key street, I believe, was George Street, and then MLK, because there was that rally 4 years ago, and you didn't do this yesterday. The rally 4 years ago, a pregnant woman can get through with the ambulance. They were worried about the other direction of Route 34. And so it seemed like they were thinking if they just stand there, you would, you guys hadn't corroborated in the past what a route would be. Maybe there'd be an intuitive sort of, you'll follow where they go. And it was almost like seeing the Berlin Wall fall down 3 times yesterday. You walked right past them, they didn't do anything. You kept going where you wanted to go. Did you know when you were passing there A, that was going to go in past them with no incident, and B, did you know at that point that you were headed for the highway?
No, I didn't know that they weren't going to do anything. I know that the cops are very bewildered because I think that they thought that that was going to stop us. And I also know that earlier in the day, they had their orders to just let us do what we wanted to do. And then I don't think that they thought we were going to come through their cop cars. And that's why I went first, because if they were going to grab anybody first or tase anybody or mace anybody, it was going to be me. I'm leading the people. I'm not going to let my people fall asunder and not be right there with them. But cops may be murderers, but cops are smart. Gangs that last that long, hundreds of years, can't last that long without smart. So I knew once they let me walk through that we were going to walk through. And at that point, yes, I was like, we're going to take the highway.
That was amazing to watch that. We're talking about that at Dateline New Haven, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhaveninfo.org. We got 3 women at the front lines of seeking redress for the murder of African Americans in this country by law enforcement. Ala Ochamare, Adis Castillo, and State Representative Robin Porter. Rawls-Ivy says, thank you, Black Lives Matter, New Haven. Amazing work yesterday. Jay Wan says, important mistakes were made. Was having this group wait so long for the mayor to appear, but it's many people willing to fix this. So you went toward the highway. And again, I was watching this and I noticed that at each step, and you were taking turns, you and Ashley and Amelia, that it seemed to me you were trying to keep a couple of messages that in other places things get out of hand. And there were a lot of rumors going up and down the line that the police in Waterbury had set dogs on the highway. So there was some problem in Waterbury. There were some people on the sidelines that none of us recognized. You wondered, were they trying to stir trouble? And that you, in one hand, were keeping people resolute. We're going to march where we want to march. This is our march, and we're going to demand something to happen. We're not backing down. And that we're going to stay disciplined and not do something stupid that gets a lot of people hurt. And it seemed like you stopped several times, so because the crowd started getting big. It seemed like you stopped a couple of times so messages could get through the line and people could catch up so that you actually were one organized body that could function intelligently. I just never seen anything like that. And then
yeah, no, we don't leave our people behind. We don't leave our people behind. We don't leave anybody behind.
So Route 34 connected, you walked on, and that was kind of amazing because the cops parted again. And I was thinking, where you go next? And I'll confess something a little bit embarrassing. I'm scared of heights. I don't even drive on the Q Bridge. So I said, oh shit, they go on the Q Bridge. I'm going to have to make a decision, but that wasn't the most important thing happened yesterday. So I asked you, and that's why I was asking you this, Ala, are you going to 95? You going to 91? So it seemed like folks weren't sure still. You had to make this all up on the fly. And or a march you didn't bring people out to, responsible for keeping them safe. But you were deciding which highway you were going to take. I talked to a police officer who said they were under the belief that you were going to go on the Q Bridge. And I said, are you going to stop them? And he said, no. And then I saw you guys stop before that fateful juncture where you pick a highway. And you had everybody stop and link arms, get somebody else's name and phone number, have white people in the front and the sides so that if police have to hit people, they're going to have to confront that. One of the people in the front row gave me their phone. They thought they would lose it. What was going on in your mind then? How are you deciding which way to turn? And did you think you were going to be attacked?
Paul, you never know. Sometimes, I just move through fear. So I knew that I wanted to stay in the front, that if people were going to be attacked, that I was going to be with my people. I also knew that it was a great chance that we weren't going to be attacked. It was 50-50. And, I just know that the New Haven and the people who came out, because it wasn't just New Haven, people who came from everywhere to support us, they were trusting me with their lives and they were trusting me in my direction and my leadership. So I wanted to honor them as well because this was our movement. I can't march on that highway. I couldn't take that highway by myself. I had over 1,000 people that were standing with me. And I wanted to make sure, one, that no one got left behind, because that is something that happens in these systems, that people who are differently able, people who think differently or who have children often get left behind. And that is actually a thing that I've noticed at protests and rallies that I've been in. And that is why when I lead the way I lead, because nobody will be left behind. Everyone will know that they are part of this movement, and that they are just as important as me, but they're putting their trust in me. And I want to make sure that I lead them with the most thought. And I didn't make these decisions by myself. I made sure that I communicated with all the other organizers that I trust and work with regularly. I work with Amelia every day. I work with Ashley every day. I work with Addis every day. So we made these decisions collectively together, and I just got the biggest mouth out of everybody. So that was in the front.
Well, I'm going to ask the others how they felt that moment. Let me just catch up with some of these listeners. Alejandra Corona Ortega says they are not just fighting for African Americans, but for Black people, regardless of citizen status. J1 Carter, mistake number 2, the symbolism of the police not joining the community or talking with the crowd to the end. Patricia Veneer says, as I always say, change comes from the people who want it, not from the so-called top. Very interesting perspectives here on Dateline New Haven 103.5 FM. And Nifa Nile, Washington, important mistake was having the group wait so long for the maid to appear. Thanks everyone for weighing in. We're talking to Adis Castillo, Ochabara, and State Rep Robin Porter. So let me ask you, Robin, you've been around the block. You've been to a lot of these things. What were you thinking in that moment when everybody stopped within sight of the I-95, I-91 entrance ramps? Locking arms, preparing. I guess Ala knew a lot I didn't know, obviously, because she thought it was 50-50. I thought it was 90-10. What were you thinking? What was going through your mind at that point?
At that point, I was not thinking. I was praying. I was standing in the gap. I was covering those people with the biggest weapon that I know, prayer. And my prayer was that they would be safe, that they would not be harmed. And I also was in conversations with state police, and they had assured me and others that, you know, they wouldn't harm anybody, that they were out there to make sure that folks were going to be safe, that they would be protected, and that they would control the flow of traffic, allow them to do what it was they needed to do in order to have their voices heard. So, I mean, for me, Paul, it was just all about standing in the gap at that moment and, you know, calling and talking to Son and checking in with the police and just making sure that everybody was going to be okay and that this was not going to turn into something that we've seen in other states that I think, I just did not want to see happen in New Haven or in the state of Connecticut at all, especially with the people that I know, I love and care about, the folks on the front lines doing this work.
Were you on the phone at that moment with the state police?
When I heard they were headed that way, and then I got back on the phone with the state police when they got to the precinct, because during the live feed, someone was saying that the state police was rolling into New Haven and they were at the police department. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What's going on? Why are we calling the state police in? So I got back on the phone with them and I spoke with Brian Foley, and he assured me that that was not the case, and that if anything, it was Hamden PD and Yale who are next in line to be called when New Haven feels like they need outside help.
How did that feel for you in your multiple roles? You're a state representative. You make the laws. You have certain, I wouldn't say protections because you're a Black woman in America, but you have a role that's different and the same as the protesters, because you've been to every protest I've ever seen. You're there with the protesters and you're with the legislators who the protesters are pushing. Does that ever give you a different perspective or any kind of conflicting feelings at moments like that by the bridge?
It always gives me a feeling of, I believe that experience is everything, and that is the difference in how you communicate, how you handle people, how you deal with these kind of conflicts and controversies. So I see it as a good thing, you know, like I'm on the ground, grassroots, never thought I'd be a politician and have somewhat of the power that people think I have, because I am a Black woman. And I don't, it's not equal. There is not equity in this position, but I put my body on the line the same way that others do, for the same reason that Allah said. You know, I live this every single day, and I am a lawmaker, and people know me. And I hope that in me showing up, it assures some level of safety, but I'm not stupid enough to not realize that if there's some outside interference going on and this thing goes left, I'm in just as much danger as the next Black person standing out there.
Adis, what were you thinking? You're a youth organizer. I'm guessing some young people you know were in that crowd, but you're also up front helping make decisions. What was going through your mind at that fateful moment before the I-91, I-95 exchange?
I was locked in arms with my sister, Rashonda McCullen from Students for Educational Justice on one side, my sister, Risa Nelson, the dean of at Yale African American Cultural Center. We had a whole afternoon planned for exercise and decided to take our exercising behinds to the march. What was overwhelming for me was the number of white young people who showed up and were given directive from the very beginning by Allah. Like, if you're here as an anti-racist, if you are here in support of Black lives, then you will put your life on the line for us. You will put your bodies before ours. You will be a barrier, a shield, so that no Black life, no Black or brown people here are injured. And they took that to heart. Like, I caught myself actually streaming live from the protest because I was so overwhelmed with excitement. A couple weekdays ago, I posted this old Donahue clip from like the 80s where Sister Souljah, Cornel West, and some other folks had this conversation about the good white people. And Sister Souljah made a very distinct point in that moment. You know, this is like 30 years ago. And she said, you know, when white people don't believe in something, they show up in the millions. Like, they show up in droves. When they don't believe in PETA, oh no, they show up against animal cruelty. They don't believe in abortion, please, I don't care what day of the week, you can go by Planned Parenthood. There's some white folks out there committed to the cause and will stay out there and will even make nice with you if you're pro-choice, but they're there. They stand behind the things that they don't believe in, right? So, you know, she made a comment at the end of that, you know, we're all of these great white people that you guys are talking about. I would, you know, until you see white people marching against racism, against white racism, then you can tell me about this movement. And yesterday, I felt that. I was like, oh my God, the time has turned. Like, this is not a Black march. This is a march of people that are tired of seeing violence, tired of seeing people of color being treated wrong by the system. And it's not, you know, I want to make this very clear. What I saw yesterday was not just the spark of revolution, but we were living revolution. We were being liberated in that moment. So for me, it was exciting to see so many young people there, Black, brown, and otherwise, ready for the fight. The folks that were there were young. I know that my place was to support what was going on, but when we made that decision to go onto the highway, the biggest thing that I felt electrified by was the number of cars that had pulled over on the highway and gotten out and were supporting us from the sideline.
That blew me away. And I do want to talk about that. I want to mention you're listening to Dateline New Haven 103.5 FM live stream newhaven.org from Black Lives Matter with the people at the front lines. Hanifa says, yes, following spirit, discernment in the moment. Tracy Petrillo, you are such an inspiring force. Jill Willis Reyes, mark of a true leader. Thank you for your work. Andrea Downer, thank you. Robin, Sharice Marie Pelkey, I wish my white peers would understand how important that is. To Neil Nixon gives you 4 raised fists. Tom Breen, thank you for convening this roundtable. Could each, I'm going to hold Tom's question till we end this. I was very interested, because I don't have as much experience at these events lately, to see what you called on white people to do. And like you, Adis, I was struck by how many young white people from the suburbs were there. I was interviewing them before. So he said, here's what you could do. We know that Black people get treated differently from the police, so put you in front. We don't want you in the middle. I said, we love you, don't want you in the middle. That goes back to me a discussion we've been having for decades. In the 60s, there was this feeling in the early civil rights movement that white people always run in the organizations, not just the money, but they run the organizations and told Black people what to do when the issue was about civil rights. The Black Panthers were part of a Black Power movement and had disagreements with other groups about what was the role of white people. And there were some groups that say white people have no role in it. And the Black Panthers said they have a role in it, but not to lead it and direct it. It's to support. And I guess I felt yesterday, I saw that discussion take another step about bodies on the line. It seemed like, where did that idea come from? Is that new? Is that something that's been in discussions?
I can tell you from the work that I've been doing as far as anti-racist organizing, I have, so I do this work with the People's Institute in addition to the work I do here in the city of New Haven through Citywide. And through that work, I have been able to meet other anti-racist collectives around the country. And what I have come to understand is that the white folks who are anti-racist, one, acknowledge the fact that, you know what, because of the way the system is set up, I am inherently a racist because I benefit from these laws. I did not build this house, but I live in it and I benefit from it. Two, as long as I may be a racist, but that's not all that I am. Meaning I can use my power to be an anti-racist. It's not enough to be a non-racist. You have to be an anti-racist. So what that means is that you have to follow the leadership of Black people, especially Black women. So for me, what yesterday showed was people were following and trusting in the leadership of a woman of color, one. Two, for white folks, their job isn't to do the work in our communities. Their job is to bring other white people along with them. That's their job. Like, you can live in New Haven, but if you live in East Rock, your job isn't to organize on Dixwell community. No, go organize East Rock. Go have that conversation with your racist uncle who you keep avoiding, because this movement is about love and liberation. And the only way that white people are going to be able to be in community with us, you can't tell us that you're in community with us if you avoid your own community. That's where the racism needs to be handled. If we're going to be about this movement together, what white people did yesterday was show up, they listened, they took directive, and they actually put their money where their mouth was. They actually showed up and they brought people with them. So that's a great start. So I know where you're going with this, Paul, because as a woman of color in the city of New Haven who provides services for young people of color in the city of New Haven, it infuriates me how much we like to call this city liberal, but white supremacy is always in play. And what does that look like? When you have a bunch of nonprofit organizations that serve young people of color, and they're either all led by white women or those boards of directors are led by white women. That's not power. That's still being told what to do. Because the minute you make the wrong noise or you don't follow the directive that is given to you by your board, you will be clipped. We've seen that happen before, where people of color who have been in positions of power are easily gotten rid of. And one more thing, and kind of thinking back to how I felt watching Ala in her role taking leadership, says, I am with you all day, I will follow behind you, was that what we have now in this moment of revolution is people are going to try to co-opt movements. And a lot of us showing up yesterday was because we weren't about to have folks meet under the name of Black Lives Matter New Haven without having Black Lives Matter New Haven as part of the actual organizing body. So we all went there in support of BLM to take leadership of that opportunity. Because I don't care how the people got there. What was important and most impressive to me was what people did while they were there. And there was love. There was actual bonding happening. People were sharing water, sharing bread. Like, I felt safe in that place.
I want to talk about that place. That's a good pivot. It was also an experience for me that was like nothing I'd experienced in years. Charisse Marie Pelkey said that was beautiful. Jill Reese, it was powerful. Eddie Chase, I wish I'd heard about ahead of time, would have been there. Rashida Winfield says, sorry about this, folks. I'm just trying to catch up with these. Thank you, ladies. Amazing work you're doing. Doc Tiffany Renee Jackson teach, and Joan Cutter speak. Let's quickly just get to Tom Breen's question, then we'll move on to what happened on the highway. Thank you for convening this with remarkable leaders. Could each speak to the role you think COVID-19, which has hit minority communities hardest, played in sparking this protest? And I guess the follow-up question too was, everyone had their masks on, but are there fears that a lot of people now will get COVID-19 from these protests across the country? Anyone feel like taking that one on?
I will. So I'm going to be transparent. Since COVID hit, I've been having like a lot of anxiety. I struggle with anxiety in my normal lived experience. And so I've been having a lot of anxiety, and I was watching the protests, and the way COVID hit me in the protests around the world was I've been getting upset even more that we can't even get a break from being murdered during a pandemic that's affecting everyone So much so many people have been murdered during COVID that we can't sit in the house and we can't just have rallies online and on Zoom. We have to be in the streets. We have to take advantage of the fact that we have the time off now. A lot of people would not have been able to join us yesterday because they would have been doing stuff for work or actually working. And so we unfortunately have to hold the space of all of that. I've been thinking, I mean, I had my mask off and on all day yesterday because I'm on the thing. You can't hear me. I'm talking, people are whispering. I can't. So, I mean, I will be very transparent and saying I'm a little worried, but we had hand sanitizer. Almost everyone else had their masks on. It was just like a select few of us who kept taking them off and on. But unfortunately, Black and brown bodies, we have to do what we have to do. And we never get a break. We never get to be privileged enough to not be murdered, to not be out and protesting. And the white folks who joined us, white folks are being murdered by police too. It's not in as much extreme, and we don't hear about it as much, but poor white people are being murdered by the cops as well. The cops are killing Black, brown, queer, trans, and poor people. And that's everyone. If you think about it, if you fit into one of those intersections, or sometimes all of them. And so we just had to do what we had to do. Unfortunately, I'm hopeful that the numbers don't spike everywhere where we're protesting. But the police gave us no other choice. They could have just not murdered EMT people, and they could not be beating up people in Walmart, and then we would not have to protest this round. But
Dateline, New Haven, Black Lives Matter. So you went on the highway. Now, every time I kept looking back, every 5 minutes, I felt like the ocean got bigger of people who were coming on.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I remember like 300-400 on Elm Street. Then I'm looking at churches going on. I said, well, this is bigger. I'm not into math, but this is bigger. And then when we were going up that incline to the highway, I looked back and I said, there's a lot of people. And then streaming on the highway, I was expecting the worst. People were linking arms. They were ready. And then we got on the highway, I-95. This highway we've all been on for decades of our lives. And all of a sudden, it belonged to the protesters, public space, and in other places that you could get shot if you try to even stop traffic. Traffic stopped in both directions. As Adis mentioned, this was amazing. It was like, it was a celebration. People were honking cars to thank you, getting out of your cars, and when they were psyched. And then everyone spread out, and I felt like there was, at the first stage, I felt like there was this celebration of owning that pavement. That did all this terror and despair in our country right now. There was this moment where people who felt like we're getting shafted suddenly took control and took power. Was I picking that up correctly, or what were people thinking and what were they feeling at that moment? Robin?
I think you did hit it on. It was about claiming and securing space for people who have been displaced, marginalized, oppressed, murdered, brutalized, beat. And to be able to do that on a major highway, I think sent a very strong message. We're sick and tired. We're here. We're not going anywhere. And this system will never change until we disrupt and dismantle. And that's what we saw yesterday. We saw a rainbow coalition of especially young people. And I've been saying this for a long time, especially since I've been doing this work. Young people, we talk about they are our future. They are our right now. And this is what we're seeing, an illustration of a generation that is going to stand on the shoulders of their ancestors and make them proud. This has been a long time in the making. It is long overdue. And I think what we've done, unfortunately, on the back of centuries of murder and rape and brutalization, is said we have white people, the people with power and privilege, that are now standing with us, standing for us, and putting their bodies on the line. This is a new thing, And the saying was, the revolution will not be televised. You want to know what's new about this? The revolution is being televised, live and direct. And no one is going to get to ignore what's going on unless they choose to, because this is in your face and we're going to have to deal with it. And you're going to be a part of the solution, or you're going to be a part of the problem. And I just want to go back to the COVID question, because the thing that is really stark, there was tremendous concern for me around that when I started seeing the protests and people taking to the streets and in these crowds. And I'm like, whoa, we, social distancing, COVID, all of that kicked in. But the next thing that kicked in for me was, we have a state right now that has been mandated by our governor to, prior to the gradual reopening, stay safe, stay home. COVID is killing people. Well, guess what? Black people stay home and they're not safe. Brianna killed in her home, in her sleep, in her bed. We can't go to church. We can't go jogging. We can't even rest. And we talked about this. We're getting no rest. I too can't sleep. I go to bed and I'm up every morning, 3, 4 o'clock, like clockwork, because this is something that you don't get to turn off when your skin is the color of ours. You don't get to turn it off. So for folks that want to really press upon, and not to say that it's not a genuine concern, the COVID concern, but you got to understand, you're talking about a population of people who are not safe at home. So if COVID is killing us and the cops is killing us, what we got to lose? Our lives. We understand that. But how are you going to lose your life? Are you going to lose your life fighting for life? Or are you going to lose your life simply throwing your hands up and surrendering? And we are not a people to surrender. The revolution is on.
Preach. Boris Camacho says, well, I'll talk about a girl. Rhonda Caldwell says, we can't even go bird watching. Adis, what were you thinking on that first stage on the highway when all of a sudden we looked around and everybody was owning the place?
At first, it felt a little uncomfortable. In fact, I really appreciate the fact that my sisters, my sister Carrie and Ala, were adamant that we're going to hold space. They got time. They got time to waste on us. They got time to hold the space down. But I think as we were taking up space, it became like a love fest. People were, hey, I haven't seen you since the lockdown took place. And people had music blasting. Folks were sharing water and snacks. And then young people were having their photo op. They were on the middle barrier. And then the thing is that got real interesting was that folks were actually talking to the folks that were in their cars being held up by the protests. And some of those folks came out of their cars and they joined in as well. I seen a little older white woman come out of her car with full mask on, but was still actually trying to engage in what was happening. And even when we finally started to move off of the highway and move back and going towards downtown, the cars they were taking off, especially the truckers, they were beeping in support. We held them for an hour and they weren't bothered. You didn't see anyone come out of their car, mad at us what we were doing. It felt like there were more people in that space standing in solidarity that weren't. And I think the one thing that I know that I was looking for was to see off-duty police officers step up and show their support. Because I know that for a fact that we do have cops that actually believe in their badge and the work that they do, but this is bigger than a person's psyche. This is about the systemic oppression of constant dehumanizing a group of people in a community. And as such, I thought that it would have been very powerful to have seen that same sentiment that the chief was trying to do. It would have been nice to actually join the march with us. They had every opportunity to join with us instead of sitting up there trying to have something separate. We want to believe that they actually believe that. But as Maya Angelou once politically said, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do.
And I want to, I think we're running out of time here, and I want to get to one last point. And thanks for saying it that way. For me, it did feel like a Berlin Wall moment. And so many great comments. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to more because time's about to run out. When it is all about that decision then to leave. So I was telling you on the march, I'd really never seen leadership on the fly like that in my life. how 3 young women or 4, I can't get the exact number, but I know Ashley and Adis and Amelia and you were making these decisions when you hadn't had a chance before this all started. Then you made the decision to leave. And I know that I was speaking to Amelia. She said there's some elderly people in those cars. We don't want to keep them all day. We wanted to claim the space, and that was important on our schedule and our rules. But we didn't want to stay there all day. And there comes a point at which, when you're running these protests, how do you decide the end game? How do you decide when it's time to claim victory and leave the stage to fight another day? Oh, you're mute. You're on mute. Oh.
I'm still waiting for the end game. We still haven't experienced that win. This is a long battle. Like, what did they say? You win the battle, but who wins the war? It's war on Black and brown and queer lives and queer bodies, and just we can barely survive. We have not yet been able to thrive. A very select few of Black people have been able to thrive and not lose their connection to the Black community. So I think that I'm so honored to be working and learning from women like Aris and Amelia, because I'm very radical and they tone me down and keep me grounded in these spaces. Because if it was up to me, we'd still be on the highway right now. And also, once soon as she said that, she was like, "Are we thinking about everyone else?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right." If my grandmother was on the other side of the highway, she would have got out her Jag and she would have been there with us, but she also would have had to pee soon. And
some of us of that age were wondering about that question.
Right. And so I knew when our people needed, a lot of people needed to go to the bathroom and people were really hot, we were under direct sun, that we knew that we were going to continue that. We didn't want to lose our numbers yet, and we wanted to honor everyone that was there and make sure that everyone, when they walk, whether they walked with us or whether they were parked with us, had a say in the moment. And we wanted to make sure that everyone was okay. And so we knew that we knew that that Eliker was at the police station. We also knew that it was some older people there, and so we needed to go to him, as he told us the other day that we weren't supposed to be at his house. So we went to him, and it's unfortunate that he made us wait until after 11 o'clock at night to come and talk to us. Not to say we would have left, but we would not have gotten maced. We would not have been traumatized in that way. People were really trying to figure out what happened when we were peaceful all day. Why did we get
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, your audio went a little
prove that when I'm sorry. I was just trying to figure out how the police chief could approve macing us when he literally the day before just made them force a picture, take a picture with saying that they stood against police violence. So it just, we're not at the end game yet.
All right. What a day it was.
It was beautiful. I'm so proud of my city.
And there's more to come.
There's way more to come.
Oh, before we leave, what's next?
Well, right now, Citywide Youth Coalition, the young people, our youth leaders, along with some other youth leaders across the city and Black Lives Matter, are going to be staging a rally on Friday, specifically standing against not only police brutality, but looking to defund the police, looking to some serious demands around the budget, specifically that looking at the police budget and how much money is being spent in policing and over policing our city. While the education system is taking a hit, and so is housing. Right. Also, specifically, I know a demand that we all have across the board is we want to stop the triple occupation of police in the city of New Haven. There's no reason why Hampden police should be policing in New Haven, nor why Yale should feel free to police in New Haven the way that they do. We have a triple occupation, triple surveillance, especially in communities like Dixwell and New Hallville. It is a lot. So look out for that. That's happening on Friday afternoon. We're not done. As Allah stated, you know, there's a war on people of color. So it's kind of like a marathon, right? We have your sprint here and there, but we're in it for the long haul. We've been fighting this since 1997, if I recorded correctly. When I was in college, when Malik Jones died, we were having this fight then. And here we are 23 years later, and we're still at the same fight.
Right. And I know we have to wrap up, Paul, but I will just say really quickly, for me as a state legislator, going back in the special session, you better believe that there will be a police accountability piece of legislation on the table, and we're sticking to that. We have got to hold officers accountable. There has to be checks and balances. People talk about changing hearts and minds. I'm not there. I'm not interested in that. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to make sure that when these heinous crimes are committed, that these officers are treated like the criminals they are.
So what's going to be in the legislation in 30 seconds? I'm sorry, it's only 30 seconmes. Robin, what's going to be in this bill?
We want accountability. We have to put laws on the books that say if you have this kind of misconduct, you need to be arrested. You need to be charged, and not with third-degree manslaughter. This was first-degree murder. We want the charges. We want the convictions. We want people to pay, and we know that when you hit folks in their pocket, that they tend to align their behavior so that doesn't continue to happen. Families are suffering, you know, and it's not fair that these officers and their families continue to have life as usual. We must disrupt their lives. We must disrupt their income and their ability to prosper in this ratchetness that they're practicing and have been practicing for centuries. This is what it's rooted and grounded in. We have got to change the culture of policing.
Well, thank you so much to Adis Castillo, State Representative Ron Porter, and Ala Alchamara of Black Lives Matter. It was a great day Sunday. Reality's still here on Monday. Thank you for joining us in Dateline. And thanks to all the comments. Sorry I didn't get to all of it. Thanks to Harry Droz, station manager and the miracle man behind the controls. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night. WNHH, New Haven's home, Community Radio.